Okay. So my name's Claire. Where are we right now? In San Rafael? No. Yes? I think so. So we're in like northern part of California, like North Bay. And please subscribe to Chat Passenger. This has been a great experience so far, so I'm going to share a few things. I am very lucky to have, being 24, having all 4 grandparents around. I'm very family oriented, and I will take pride in that because my parents have always taught me that, you know, being proud in who you are and your family is something that takes you to the grave. So about a month ago, I lost one of my grandfathers, and I was very close to him. And unfortunately, he got diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. And that means, so dementia to most people means like they forget who you are. But Lewy body means that you forget how to function. So you have to get up and help him go to the bathroom and whatnot. And so recently, about 3 weeks ago, I was going to go visit him in the hospital because he had a spill. And this man is the most stubborn man I've ever met in my life. So we are just like sitting there, and he is 6'4", because everybody but me is tall in my family. And he was just not able to be like go to the bathroom or like do whatever. And so unfortunately, a few days later, he passed away. And my mom and I were kind of right there with him that weekend. And as much as I'm so lucky to say I've had all my grandparents near me, I've also was able to experience losing a loved one front row. And so when the time came, or a little bit beforehand, I cope with humor. And so my mom and I are sitting there, like, I always brought him yellow flowers because yellow was his like favorite color. And so I was like, oh, look, Pop, like, I bought you yellow flowers, like, whatever, like, you know, like, trying to show him. And I'm the second youngest of 6 grandchildren. And I'm 24. And as I said earlier, but he came to, and this was the last conversation I had with him. And he looked at me, he said, Claire, I love you. Are you married? And unfortunately, I'm not married. And nor do I even have a boyfriend, which is fine, because you know, that being a whole nother thing, I don't need to have a boyfriend. And I couldn't lie to him because I knew at some point, I knew he was going to pass. I knew he would know I was lying. And so a little bit of a side story is like, I love to go to the gym. I love to weight train, and I like to rock climb. And so the only thing I could say to him was, no, Pop, I'm not married. I don't have a boyfriend, but I'm rock climbing. Like, the last words that I said to my grandfather was, no, but I'm rock climbing. Like that's some huge monumental, you know, advice. And he wasn't fully in it, but he kind of chuckled at me and laughed. And honestly, like, that's all I could ask for, because he knew that I'd always try to crack jokes. Like, he knew, like, he wasn't doing too well, and I'd be like, he'd have his walker, and I'd be like, oh, you know, Hot Wheels coming in, you know, and he'd laugh at me, so I didn't feel like I had to lie to him. But, you know, I think it's hard losing family members. And as I've mentioned, I'm very, very lucky, very blessed to have a family that I am so oriented around. But it's been really hard. But grief comes in waves. And my grandma is an absolute superstar. Absolutely amazing woman who's like, the day he passed, we took all the medical care out of the house. We changed the chairs, it's just, and to her point, like, she shouldn't have been taking care of him for so long. So I'm very lucky to have had the experience I did, and I will never, I mean, I used to call him all the time and totally harass them and make sure that, like, they knew that I cared about them, and I will never, ever regret that. And I will make sure that I keep doing that, because the last thing I ever want in life is for the people that taught me how wonderful and how amazing you should be in life. Like, I never want them to forget that I listened to their words, because it's just so taken for granted for. And these people taught me who I am, and every single accomplishment, every single job promotion I get is because of them. So,
what is the most, favorite thing about your grandpa?
He was very competitive, and so we'd play backgammon, and then, he played backgammon with my cousins, and one of my favorite things about him was he'd wear really bright colors, and I don't wear a lot of bright colors. I love, like, my neutrals and blah blah blah, and so yellow was his favorite color. And he had yellow socks. He always had yellow socks. And then, or he had like a pastel, like kind of like a neon orange shirt. And every time I'd walk in, and he was a big guy. He was like 6'4", and I'd always hug him and be like, oh, like, this is the pastel color of the night, Pop. Like, this is all you, big guy. And he always called me miserable child. He'd be like, oh, you little miserable child. Like, in no harmful way at all. And I would just make fun of the colors he wore, because we were so opposite, but we were so also in tune to the relationship that we had. It was like me poking fun at him, or him being like, like, are you making $3 million a year like you should be? Like, are you conquering the world, Miss Claire? Like, the whole thing. And so we were really good at, like, going back and forth about it. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
So you were very, very close to him.
I was pretty close to him. I think the dementia took a little bit out of it. I didn't feel, I got a little bit resentful of the dementia, because I didn't, when people have dementia, they don't know where they are, and they don't know necessarily who's around them. And he couldn't hear very well. And so I didn't feel like wanting to get in his face and be like, Pop, it's Claire, like, how are you? Like, I'd just sit next to him, and I'd hold his hand, because I didn't want to scream at him or, like, tell him anything that really, I had no big news, and I didn't want to, like, make him feel like I was talking at him. I always wanted to make him feel like I was with him. And I think it's important, especially as people get older, like, it's not their fault that they are, like, losing memory or they're losing function. Like, it is not, it's something that I'm going to have to be aware of when I get older. It's just something that I have to, like, my mom worries about it. Like, it's really important that we also have the right people around them. And they had great, caretakers. Like, they had people who understood the illness, but, like, I never wanted to sit there and just, like, yell at him, because, like, that's not what he wanted to hear. I would give him a hug, I'd do my rounds, I say hi to everybody, but then I just want to be next to him. I didn't have any big news. Clearly, I am not married, so I didn't have anything important to tell him. But I think it's most important is just, like, quality time.
Just to be with him.
Yeah, just to be with him. Just to be with my grandparents. Like, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have them. The least I can do is just sit there and just be with them. So, I mean, there are so many worse things in this world, right? And every time something bad happens, I'm like, there are worse things in this world. And losing him is probably one of the worst things in my life that has ever happened. But I could say that he is one of the best things that ever happened to me. And that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. My deepest condolences
Thank you.
to you and your family, loved ones, because of him during the holiday season.
It's okay.
I can feel it's heavy, it's hard. But yeah, one more question.
Yeah.
What kind of suggestion do you have for the people who are having their grandparents around them now? What would you tell them? What would be your message for them?
For the people losing their parents?
For the people that they are having their grandparents right now.
You know, I have friends who don't know their grandparents very well. And are people who never knew their grandparents. And it's a very sensitive topic because you're like, I sit here and I'm like, live every moment, like be there every second you can. But like my brother doesn't live in the state. And so I had to tell him that our grandpa wasn't going to make it in a week. That was the hardest thing. And so I think for every single person, it's so different. And so there's no right or wrong answer. But from here out, you know, if you have these people, all it takes is like a phone call. And like some of my other grandparents, I love them, you know, to death. And we might not match on every single, you know, section of life, but I would never regret for over calling them, like overdoing it. And then also for the people who don't get along with it, that don't know them, then like, what makes you happy? You know, it's like what kept, like you're here, what keeps you here? What makes you important to this world? And I'm very lucky to sit here and say like, oh, like I am able to be who I am because of the influences I have, because of my mom and because of my dad and because of these amazing grandparents. I'm so lucky to say that. But also for the people that aren't able to say that, you're able to say, I got here. I'm here because of me. And I remember a very long time ago, as lucky as I am to have the people around me, I remember my dad telling me one time, he was like, the only person that gets you through life, like if all things came to like ashes and crumbs and everything, the only person that gets through your life is yourself. And I've lived by that for a certain sense. Financially, emotionally, like sometimes like it might just be you. How are you going to deal with that? And hopefully people don't have to only be on their own. But if you do, how are you going to be able to live with that? It's my biggest. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
You're more than welcome if you want to share your social media or...
No, I'm totally fine.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking me home.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
No problem.